elder sister and I were twins. In our previous life, she and the man she loved were cruelly forced apart, condemned to a lifetime of sorrow behind the palace walls. As for me, thanks to her silent sacrifice, I was granted a life of my choosing. I married the one I loved, and together we spent our days in complete happiness. But fate is ever a trickster, like some fleeting dream. When I opened my eyes, everything had returned to the moment before the imperial decree of marriage was announced. Without hesitation, I seized this chance. I dropped to my knees before our parents, bowed my head, and declared, "I am willing to marry the third prince." Elder sister, Xinqing, stood frozen in shock. I kept my head lowered, teeth clenched, making my silent vow to step willingly into the whirlpool of intrigue and power, so that Xinqing might live this life in peace, free of any further suffering. But she slipped away from home again. Since childhood, she had been the dignified eldest daughter of the Prime Minister's household, her every word and gesture in perfect decorum. And yet, for the sake of one man, she had become uncharacteristically spirited. That man was Fei Huai, the young master of the minister's family, famous for his carefree, unrestrained ways, indifferent to the affairs of state. He took Xinqing kite-flying, strolling through markets, sampling every delicacy, and leading her to marvel at majestic landscapes. At last, he confessed his love to her. She was deeply moved, but only dared to blush and lower her gaze, unable to lay bare all her feelings. In the Prime Minister's household, there were only the two of us daughters. Since girlhood, Xinqing had been raised to shoulder the family's great cause, perhaps even to be crowned the mother of the nation. Failing that, she still held the right to choose her husband. In the previous life, she became empress, second to none but the emperor himself, revered and unassailable. And so I was free to live without care or burden. But in exchange, Xinqing had to sever her tender bond with Fei Huai, burying her own heart forever within the palace's cold scheming. It was only when she lay dying that she whispered words I could never forget. "Ayu." From the day I entered the palace, not once was I happy. Hearing this, I wept bitter tears, keeping vigil beside her coffin all through the night. When exhaustion finally claimed me, the candle tipped over, flames billowing in the darkness, and I lost consciousness. When I awoke, time itself had returned to the past. That day, Xinqing was caught climbing over the wall. Our parents sat in the main hall, stern and impassive. I stood to the side, scarcely daring to breathe, my hands clutching my sleeve. Xinqing knelt in the center of the floor, her face drawn and weary, yet stubbornly refusing to confess any fault. At last, Mother spoke, her voice heavy. "Qing'er, if this matter spreads, how will you and I ever marry?" Father gave a cold huff and added, "The royal family is about to select brides. You two will remain in this household and are not to step beyond these gates. Born into this clan, you do not have the privilege of choosing your own path. Xinqing, as the elder sister, you must understand your duty." With those words, they turned and left. I watched until their figures were gone before Xinqing finally lowered her head, tears falling like pearls to the floor. I recalled how, in the past life, at this moment she did not cry. She merely spoke softly. "Qing'er understands." Then she had patted my head gently and comforted me. "Ayu, this is the duty of the eldest daughter." I waited silently for her to gather herself, meaning to step forward and soothe her. But in her eyes, always so gentle, I glimpsed the same loneliness I had seen as she lay dying. "Ayu," she murmured, "I am not happy." "Elder sister." I could only stammer, not knowing how to answer. After a long while, she forced a faint smile. "Don't worry, Ayu. I will find a way. I will protect you." But she never knew. My greatest wish was only for her to find happiness. That day, Father announced the imperial edict would soon arrive. The third prince, Yuan Hao, who was rising like the morning sun, required a bride from the Prime Minister's household. Sunlight flooded the courtyard as the eunuch readawed, the decree naming only the young lady of the Prime Minister's residence, no specific name given. After our parents offered thanks and saw the eunuch away, they summoned us to the study. "Qing'er," Father said solemnly, "from today forward, the honor of our household rests upon your shoulders." Before he could go on, I dropped to my knees, bowing deeply. "Father, Mother, I am willing to marry the third prince in my sister's place. Qing stared at me in shock. I pressed on firmly. Father, I am also a daughter of this house, no less worthy to be wed. And besides, my heart has long belonged to someone else. I wish to marry him. Mother clutched my hand tightly. Have you truly thought this through? The palace is no place of warmth. I glanced at Qing, her lips pressed thin, her back taut as a drawn bow. Though we were both daughters, she bore the crushing weight of duty, while I had always been the free-spirited one. Yet I was hardly unprepared. All that needed to be learned, I had learned. All that must be known, I understood. I stepped forward, took her hand, and spoke softly. Sister, from now on, mother and father will rely on you alone. At that, she finally broke down in tears. I knew she, too, had died and returned to life, yearning now to lay down every burden. But how could she bear to watch her only sister walk into the storm in her place? I gently consoled her. Don't cry. I am only going to claim my share of blessings. Then I leaned close and whispered, Fei Huai is waiting with cinnamon pastries for you by the southern gate. Her cheeks flushed pink at once. I rose, walked to the window, and looked out at the crabapple blossoms in full bloom. In this life, though I knew danger awaited, I would still step forward without regret, so long as Qing could live free of sorrow. On the day of the wedding, the Prime Minister's residence was bright with banners and celebration. Qing watched as I donned the bridal robes, her eyes rimmed with red. Do you truly wish to marry? She was always so proper, yet now she whispered, Shall I go in your stead? Hush. I quickly shut the window. Sister, everything is arranged. To change our minds now, what would the household say? Seeing her pale face, I reassured her. Don't worry, I will manage. With her worry pressed to my heart, I left the home where I had lived all my life. Night fell, the lanterns blazing bright. But the third prince, Yuan Hao, never came. He sent only a message that he would not return this evening. In the past life, on this very night, my elder sister too was abandoned. Fei Huai had sat drunk by the courtyard wall all night, while I lay awake until dawn. But this time, it was me waiting in the bridal chamber. I lifted the veil with my own hands and told the servants, The wedding wine need not be drunk here. Wherever His Highness is, I shall go to him. The messenger, uneasy, led me through a small garden where the mournful strains of a zither drifted in the air. Yuan Hao sat there, his gaze fixed on the woman playing the instrument. I recognized her at once, Jia Rong, the one he would cherish all his life. Composing myself, I stepped forward and bowed. Your Highness, I have come to invite you to share a cup of wedding wine. Yuan Hao lifted his gaze, and at once the zither strings under Jia Rong's fingers fell out of tune. Jia Rong quickly rose, her movement graceful as she bowed. Your humble concubine greets the third prince's princess consort. Yuan Hao frowned in irritation. Ronger, did I not tell you there was no need for formalities? I caught the flash of triumph in Jia Rong's eyes. Turning to Yuan Hao, I motioned for the servants to present the wine. Your Highness, please. He let out a cold laugh. Does it make any difference whether we drink or not? Of course it does, I answered calmly. Once you drink, Your Highness will be my lawful husband, and the Prime Minister's household will be officially bound to you. In my past life, I knew well that Yuan Hao was cunning beyond measure. My gentle elder sister never suspected he already had a lover, this Jia Rong. He pretended affection for her, deceiving the entire Prime Minister's residence. When he finally married Jia Rong as a concubine, he allowed her to torment my sister without restraint, until she withered away in sorrow and died confessing her misery. Lost in these thoughts, I turned and saw Jia Rong shedding tears. In a soft voice, I spoke. Miss Jia, have I disturbed you tonight by coming here to fetch my husband? Jia Rong faltered, looking uneasy. Yuan Hao opened his mouth to retort, but I spoke first. Your Highness, do you intend to disgrace the Prime Minister's household on your wedding night over an outsider? I deliberately emphasized the words an outsider. Jia Rong glared resentfully at Yuan Hao, only to meet his cold indifference. Finally, she stamped her foot and left, throwing me a look of undisguised hatred as she went. I smiled serenely and raised the cup, drinking the ceremonial wine with Yuan Hao. When the wine was finished, he fixed his gaze on me, his tone mocking. Such a sharp tongue. You must be pleased with yourself, driving Jierong away. I do not understand what your highness means, I murmured, lowering my head. He let out a dry laugh. Since you're already here, shall we return to the bridal chamber? I took a step back. Your highness, forgive me. I fear my monthly courses will begin any day. I would not wish to disappoint you. Without waiting for his reply, I bowed, turned, and walked away. Behind me, I could feel his searing gaze, like needles pricking my skin. Only when I was back in my room did I dare to let go of my composure. In the faint scent of incense, a quiet ache rose in my chest. Years ago, my sister must have sat here too, alone in this same chamber, swallowing her humiliation. Did she cry? With no husband by her side, anyone could scorn and trample her. How could I have been so blind back then? The next morning, Yuan Hao and I prepared to enter the palace to pay our respects. He was always meticulous in official matters. Everything was ready well before dawn. Crossing the palace gates, following the familiar path through the inner court, I felt a mixture of familiarity and strangeness. It was not my first time walking this road, but it was the first time I came as the third prince's principal wife. When we reached the gates of Qianning Palace, Yuan Hao abruptly stopped. Second brother, you've returned. I followed his gaze and froze. That face, it was identical to the husband I had loved in my previous life. Gentle eyes like clear water. Anyone who met that gaze would know this was a true gentleman. Yes, he replied calmly. I will be leaving shortly. His eyes turned to me. And this must be the third prince's princess consort. I bowed low. Your humble servant greets the second prince. He nodded before taking his leave. When his figure had disappeared, I quietly asked, Your Highness, this is the first time I have seen the second prince. I have never even heard anyone speak of him. My elder brother enjoys wandering incognito, Yuan Hao replied tonelessly. His name is Yuan Xingji, or simply Yuan Xing. A current stirred in my heart. There was no mistake, he was the one. The man who had been my husband in that other life. All those times he vanished for days on end, so he had returned to the palace to visit. I fought to keep my expression steady and followed Yuan Hao further inside. As we stepped into the central hall, a sweet, aggrieved voice called out. Your Majesty, you must see justice done for me. Yuan Hao must have been doting on consort Shenyu. Last night my zither string broke, and he didn't care at all. It was the very instrument you bestowed upon me. Yuan Hao cleared his throat and hastened forward. At the sight of him, Jierong's cheeks turned pink. Your son greets mother. I stepped up as well, kneeling with lowered eyes. Your humble servant pays respects to your Majesty, the Empress. For a moment, the hall fell silent. No voice called for us to rise. Yuan Hao spoke up. Mother, you did not rest well last night. Only then did the Empress's voice sound, slow and deliberate. Rise. I stood and quietly retreated behind Yuan Hao, listening as mother and son discussed affairs of court and household matters. After a while, the Empress shifted the subject, her tone light. The principal wife has been chosen. Perhaps it is time I selected a secondary consort for you. It would ease my mind to know someone else could share the household. Oh, Yuan Hao let out a mirthless laugh. I suppose mother already has someone in mind. What do you think of Jierong? The Empress's eyes flicked to Jierong. Noble consort. Jierong murmured shyly, her cheeks flushing deeper, giving the Empress more reason to tease her. If Jierong is unwilling, I will not force her. At that, Jierong promptly fell to her knees. Your humble servant is willing. I understood at once. The news that we had not consummated the marriage must have reached the Empress. Arranging a secondary consort was both a subtle warning to me and a way to place her own confidant beside Yuan Hao. One arrow, two hawks. But I did not care much. My mind was only occupied with counting the days until I could return to the Prime Minister's residence. 3 more days. I smiled inwardly. In a familiar room, I sat across from Xinqing. She clutched my hand, unwilling to let go. You, how is the third prince treating you? Has he made things difficult? No, sister, don't worry. I'm fine. I patted the back of her hand to reassure her. But I heard he plans to take a secondary consort. Yes, I nodded lightly. What? She shot to her feet. It's all right, I said. Think about it. I am the princess consort. I want for nothing. I have full authority over the household. I rarely have to serve the third prince. It isn't so bad. But her eyes were full of sorrow, shimmering with unshed tears. At length, her voice came out in a choked whisper. I should never have let you marry in my place. I have failed you. I stared at her, momentarily stunned. In my past life, every time she came home to visit, I would rush to chatter with her. She always smiled and said she was well, that she was happy, telling me not to fret. Not like me now, returning home only to pour out every truth. Seeing her about to weep, I quickly changed the subject. Sister, what about you and Fei Hui? How far have things progressed? At once, she froze and glanced up at the roof beams in alarm. I blinked. What is it? Did you let him eavesdrop on us? Her face turned scarlet. Hui said he is only nearby to keep watch. He promised he would cover his ears and not listen. Humph. Then he has tricked you, I teased. Look, half a piece of cassia cake fell down right here. Xinqing's eyes widened in shock. Then her face turned bright red, her voice rising in rare indignation. Fei Hui, you get down here this instant. Standing to the side, I laughed until tears brimmed in my eyes. My elder sister, still so lively and unguarded, just as she used to be. How wonderful. By the time I left the Prime Minister's residence, dusk had settled over the city. Yuan Hao claimed he had official duties to attend, but I knew perfectly well he was heading for the Jia household, likely to discuss the wedding arrangements. Riding alone in the carriage back to the residence, I did not feel lonely, only unburdened. When I returned to my chamber, everything was still draped in the vivid red of our wedding day. I sat down and unpacked the little confections Xinqing had sent: red bean cakes, honeyed lotus root, rose pastries. Nestled among them was a small wine flask, sealed with a slip of paper reading Qingyu. It was the very wine the two of us had buried beneath the peach tree when I came of age. That day, Xinqing had patted the fresh earth and solemnly warned me never to drink it early. When you marry, she had said, we'll dig it up and share a feast together. The faint sense of peach blossoms and wine drifted through the room. I swallowed and tried to remember when, in my previous life, I had ever touched this flask. But back then, Xinqing was married off, so suddenly I'd forgotten all about it. Years later, when she had become empress and heard of Consort Rome's pregnancy, she had slipped out to the peach grove alone, unearthed this bottle, and drained it in one gulp, tears streaming down her cheeks. This is for the best, she had whispered. Perhaps Yuan Hao will finally stop visiting my palace. At the time, I thought she was simply drunk and rambling. Only much later did I understand. It was the most honest wish she had ever spoken, to cling to some scrap of peace in that suffocating palace. Now, in this life, I picked up a folded note tucked beside the flask. The handwriting was neat and even, undoubtedly hers. Xiaoyu, if you are ever unhappy, tell me. I will bring you home at once. I smiled faintly, folded the note again, and fed it to the flame. Even now, she worried I would end up as she had, trapped in a web of obligations, unable to choose my own path, losing myself. But I was different. This time, I would never allow the same tragedy to unfold. When Consort Rome finally entered the residence, it happened to be the day of the first snowfall. Flakes of white danced playfully with the winter wind. A maid offered to escort me to the grand hall, but I shook my head. I knew all too well that Yuan Hao had no wish for Jia Rong to kneel before me and offer her respects. Sure enough, when I arrived, the place was deserted, silent as stone. I slept peacefully that entire night. The next morning, I overheard the maids gossiping that the bathwater in Consort Rong's quarters had been changed over and over. Yuan Hao, worried she might tire, had postponed the hour for entering the palace. By the time they returned, it was nearly midday, and they brought back countless chests of lavish gifts. I was watering flowers in the small courtyard, dressed simply in a thin white silk gown, my hair pinned up without ornament. When Yuan Hao caught sight of me, his eyes flickered in brief surprise. At once, Jierong clutched his arm, her voice sweet and coaxing. Hao Ji, the flowers here are so dull. Come back with me. I want to show you the new hairpins His Majesty has gifted me. Before he could look at me again, she had claimed all his attention. He smiled indulgently. Very well, whatever you like. Just as they were about to turn away, a young eunuch hurried over to announce. The second prince is waiting in the front hall. He has brought wedding gifts. Elder brother has come. Yuan Hao immediately turned back, calling for me to join him in greeting the guest. I followed in silence. At the threshold of the hall, I paused to steady my breathing before stepping inside. There, standing in the center of the room, was Yuan Xing. His presence was serene as the sky itself, unsoiled by the dust of the world. At the sound of footsteps, he turned, offering a gentle smile. "Cindy, I have brought a little something to celebrate your marriage. Elder brother, you are too kind." Yuan Hao smiled as he accepted the lacquered box, opening it slowly. Standing beside him, I happened to glance inside. My heart clenched, and my fingers dug into the hem of my sleeve. That night, Yuan Hao remained in Consort Rong's quarters, and I, finally at peace, sat by the window, turning over the gift the second prince had brought that morning. It was the jade hairpin, the very one he had once secretly given me in our past life as a token of our betrothal. The other hairpin, a brightly painted camellia, he had given to Jie Rong. She had always preferred vivid colors. The jade pin was cool in my hand, its elegant lines unmarred by time. In the past life, Yuan Xing had personally tucked it into my hair, then gazed at me for a long moment before whispering it suited me perfectly. Who could have guessed that in this life, it would still find its way back to me? I picked up a mirror and carefully pinned it in place. Reflected, there was the image of a woman, gentle, reserved, a kind of beauty I had once kept only for him and my sister. I remembered how, before our wedding, he had softly asked if I ever felt lonely without my parents. And I had answered without hesitation, "So long as I am with you, nothing else matters." We had wandered together, blissful. Perhaps, in that life, I had been too content. Perhaps that was why, in this life, he no longer remembered any of it. And maybe that was fair. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter slipped by. I had been married into the third prince's residence for a full year. Now, Yuan Hao was named crown prince. The Eastern Palace grew busy with visitors, noble families eager to send their daughters in hopes of securing favor. The Empress showed little interest in any of it, caring only to press Yuan Hao to produce an heir. But none of it had anything to do with me. In all that year, Yuan Hao and I had never shared a bed. If anything, it was Jie Rong's household that had become a tangle of unrest. She had locked herself in her chambers, refusing food for 2 days straight. Whenever Yuan Hao appeared, she would cling to him, weeping. "Hao Ji, can't you be content with just me? Please, don't take anyone else." I found it tiresome and slipped away without a word. Jie Rong, for all her cunning, was hopelessly infatuated with Yuan Hao. Her jealousy would only wear her down in the end. When Yuan Hao ascended the throne, he would never be satisfied with only one consort. Her endless clinging would bring her nothing but loss. Better, perhaps, to know when to show one's grievances. There might still be a chance to salvage something. But all of that no longer concerned me. Whoever joined this household from now on, I would simply watch. Not long after, Yuan Hao took 2 more secondary consorts. Now that he was crown prince, he was careful not to wed any lady from an overly powerful clan, but neither of these 2 were insignificant. One was Fei Qing, related to the minister's household, a distant cousin of Fei Huai. The other, Song Shi, the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor, famed alongside my sister as one of the twin beauties of the capital, both talented and beautiful. On the very first day they entered the palace, Jie Rong could not restrain herself. She raised her chin with haughty disdain. But she was only the Empress's niece, relying solely on Yuan Hao's affection. Such petty displays would only make him weary of her. What in this world is more fragile than a woman's love? 2 months later, Fei Qing announced her pregnancy. The maid who came to inform me could not hide her gloating. "Your Highness, you should have seen Consort Rong's face. She looked as if she would shatter her own teeth." I turned my gaze on her, cold and steady. The smile vanished from her lips. She dropped to her knees in panic. "Forgive me, Your Highness, I was out of line. See that it never happens again." When I finished speaking, I let my gaze drift to the window. I recalled how, in my past life, Consort Rong's gravest mistake was goading Yuan Hao into exiling Fei Huai, a mere civil official, to the frontier, where he eventually perished on the battlefield. That day, Shen Qing had returned home to visit our parents. The moment she saw me, she broke down in sobs. "Ah, you. Tell me, should I never have kept that safety talisman A Huai gave me?" It was that pair of matching talismans that had given Jie Rong cause to suspect. She discovered Fei Huai carried one identical to Shen Qing's and deduced their bond. I had indirectly ruined him. Fei Hui should have lived a quiet life, married to a gentle wife, raising children in peace. That was the first time I had ever seen my sister weep in such despair. I didn't know how to comfort her, and from that day until her death, she never truly found happiness again. As time passed, the light in her smile faded, replaced by the solemn dignity of an empress. Yet in her whole life, she committed only one cruel act. When a concubine fell pregnant, Shenqing used a small scheme to shift the blame onto Jie Rong. The crime of harming an imperial heir was immense. Even so, Jie Rong was merely demoted. Snow blanketed everything in white the day Shenqing stood in the courtyard of Kunning Palace, staring into the hazy air, tears slipping free. Oh, why don't think me vicious. That girl had been inhaling musk for months. The child would never have survived. When the snow stopped, she turned and asked me, do you think I was truly too heartless? I embraced her tightly. In my eyes, you will always be the best sister. So when Fei Qing came to see me, I wasn't surprised. Among all the secondary consorts in the Eastern Palace, she was the most vulnerable. After she poured out her fears, I smiled faintly. Why not ask the Crown Prince himself to protect you and your child? Do you really believe I can guarantee your safety? Fei Qing's face drained of color. Your Highness, if you will help me deliver the child safely, I swear, I will give the baby to you to raise. My smile vanished. And who can say whether your child will even be born alive? She looked stricken and collapsed to her knees. I have offended you. Please forgive me. I lifted her calmly. In that moment, I thought of Shenqing in her past life, and my heart ached. Very well, I said softly. I will help you, but I cannot promise absolute safety. If anything happens along the way, you must not hold me accountable. And you must swear one thing. If misfortune comes, you will blame everything on Jie Rong. I will prepare the evidence. Will you agree? Tears welled in Fei Qing's eyes. At last, she nodded. I agree. Then remember everything we have said today. In my past life, sheltered by my sister's protection, I had never schemed or maneuvered. Yet before I could act, Jie Rong had already made her move out of impatience. I had left the palace for half a day to visit my parents. By the time I returned, it was all over. Fei Qing lay on her bed, tears still damp at the corners of her eyes. When she tried to rise and bow to me, I stopped her. Her voice trembled. It was Consort Rome. I was in the garden, she came to me. And when I went to the river to look at the lotus, her chief maid pushed me in. I drew a slow breath and gave the order coldly. Detain Consort Rome. We will await the Crown Prince's return. When the servants dispersed, a maid slipped me a folded slip of paper. I opened it, and my heart squeezed tight. The handwriting was Shenqing's. Hold on to that, chief maid. She will confess everything. I burned the note at once, speaking quietly to the maids. You serve under my sister's orders and report to me, don't you? Though my voice was chiding, my heart felt warm. Even now, even after I had married into this house, she still laid out the path for me in secret. Just as the last of the paper turned to ash, a servant rushed in to announce Yuan Hao's return. What followed went more smoothly than I'd ever expected. I had prepared for every possibility, fearing the chief maid would rather die than implicate Jie Rong. But instead, the maid confessed everything, swearing she had acted under Jie Rong's orders. With evidence so plain, Jie Rong could not refute it. This was Yuan Hao's first imperial heir. When the empress learned what had happened, her fury was like a storm. She ordered Jie Rong confined for 6 months. No matter how Yuan Hao pleaded, it was useless. During that time, he spent most nights in Fei Qing's residence. With Jie Rong out of the way, Fei Qing finally felt secure, and before long, she announced she was pregnant again. When Jie Rong's confinement ended, the child in Fei Qing's womb was already strong and well. This time, Jie Rong did not dare cause trouble, no doubt cowed by the empress's warning. Soon, the day of labor came, and all the Eastern Palace waited anxiously. Yuan Hao himself paced outside the birthing chamber, his nerves taut. At last, the wail of a newborn pierced the air. A midwife emerged, beaming. A prince. Excellent. Yuan Hao's eyes glinted with rare warmth. He turned to me. Shall we have the child raised beside you? I lowered my gaze. It would be better, I said gently, if Consort Song cared for him. She is well educated, far more suitable than I. Yuan Hao considered, then nodded. That is fine. This, too, was something Fei Qing and I had already agreed upon. She had no objection. Songshi, of course, could hardly refuse. A few days later, Xinqing came to visit Fei Qin, and afterward, she stopped by my residence. After hearing everything, she watched me with soft eyes. Unable to hold back, I blurted, "And you wanted me to raise his child? Dream on." She flicked her finger against my forehead. "You are still just a child. Truly, you're not as sensible as Songshi." I wasn't offended at all. I leaned against her shoulder, thinking how she and Songshi were alike in their composure, while I only wanted to remain forever her little sister. 3 years passed since I entered the Eastern Palace. The emperor's health steadily declined. Yuan Hao was constantly occupied, and with the birth of his son, his affection for Jierong all but disappeared. In the end, she reaped the consequences of her own doing. With my quiet maneuvering, their bond, once so passionate, faded to nothing. What they called love had never been more than a fleeting infatuation. In the royal family's cold, calculating world, who could expect a man to remain devoted to one woman forever? After she fell from favor, Jierong rarely showed herself. With Fei Qing and Songshi managing the Eastern Palace's affairs, I found myself quite free. And so, I amused myself. Whenever I had nothing to do, I dressed as a young man, climbed over the wall, and roamed the city. Today was no different. After wandering for hours, I ended up in a shabby wonton shop tucked in a narrow alley. I had only just sat down, the bowl of steaming broth untouched, when someone settled into the seat across from me. I looked up, and there he was, Yuan Xing. His eyes met mine, and I quickly lowered my head, as if we were strangers. "You serve in the Eastern Palace." I hesitated a moment, then nodded, no sense denying it. My clothes bore the insignia. Of course he had noticed. "I am merely a servant attending the crown princess. Today my mistress permitted me to come out for some fresh air." He inclined his head slightly, then began to speak of poetry and travel, all the things he had loved in the previous life, the same topics we had once shared in countless conversations. The longer we talked, the more I felt how naturally our hearts aligned. When we finally parted, he looked reluctant and asked to meet again. After that, whenever I had the chance, I disguised myself as a young man and slipped out to wander with Yuan Xing. We sailed boats, admired the scenery, discussed all manner of things, east and west. Until one day, he came to the Eastern Palace and, with simple honesty, asked Yuan Hao if he might have the young servant he'd met, someone with whom he got along so well. I quickly refused, saying that person had already left the capital and returned to Jiangnan. Yuan Hao never cared out trifles and did not ask further. When Yuan Xing departed, I stood on in the courtyard, clenching my hands. I thought, in this life, our bond was destined to end here. Yet still, I was grateful to heaven for granting us those days of quiet solace. I was about to turn away when Yuan Hao's voice called after me. "Come with me into the palace. The emperor will not last the night." The mournful tolling of the funeral bell rolled through every corner of the realm. After the emperor passed, the empress followed him into death. As crown princess, I bore the duty of standing vigil beside the coffin. Not until all rites were concluded and the imperial tomb sealed did I finally return to the Eastern Palace. That night, I fell into a long, heavy dream. I dreamed of the past life, of that final night in the morning hall where Xinqing's coffin rested. Smoke and flames billowed everywhere. I had not been able to stand against them and had fainted. In the dream, just as I lost consciousness, my sister, whom all believed already dead, suddenly climbed out of the coffin, crying out in terror. "Are you someone help? It's my fault. I thought if I faked my death, I could escape the palace, but I forgot you would never leave me behind. You would stay with me until the very end." She screamed and sobbed, but her voice was soon swallowed by the roaring fire. She held me tightly on the cold floor, softly humming the lullaby our mother once sang to us. The melody faded. She still kept me close in her arms as the flames consumed everything. I woke with a jolt to find dawn still far off. Lighting a candle, I sat quietly, piecing together all that had come before. The look in Xinqing's eyes when she accepted the imperial edict, the day I married, the way she conspired against Jierong, as if it had all been planned from the start. When the first light of morning broke across the sky, the last of my doubts fell away. "Prepare the carriage," I ordered. "I am going to the Prime Minister's residence." In the garden where Xinqing and I had played as children, The blossoms were still in bloom, their fragrance gentle on the air. My sister had tended this place with care for so long. We sat down at the stone table. Xin took up a small spade and unearthed a jar of wine from beneath the peach tree. When she opened it, the mingled scents of peach blossoms and strong liquor drifted free. She leaned close, breathing it in. How fragrant. I remained silent, waiting while she poured me a cup. I drained it in one swallow. The taste was bitter and sweet all at once. Without warning, I asked, "Sister, in the last life, you never really died, did you?" The gentle expression on her face vanished. Tears spilled down her cheeks in a steady stream. I never meant to hurt you. That time, I only wanted to leave the palace forever. I arranged everything, but never imagined how much it would wound you. I dared not tell anyone. If I failed, there would be no escape. I was selfish, so selfish. Her voice grew more urgent, like she was trying to confess everything at last. I laid my hand over hers. "Sister, I don't blame you. I only want to know, what are your plans now? You've prepared everything, haven't you? You wouldn't leave me trapped in a den of vipers." She brushed my brow with trembling fingers. "My little sister has grown so clever. Even I can no longer keep secrets from you." Then she took out a small pill and pressed it into my palm. "Keep this safe. The Eastern Palace is full of the Crown Prince's people. There will be no easy way out. But when he ascends the throne, I will have our allies ready in the palace to help you escape. I've spoken with the Grand Tutor and Song Shi. Once you are safely gone, the Prime Minister and the Hanlin Academy will submit memorials together, asking that Song Shi be named Empress. But first, you must pretend to meet with disaster. Take this pill and feign death. Someone will be waiting to bring you away." As she spoke, she dipped her finger in wine and drew a rough plan on the table. I memorized every detail. By the time we parted, the sun had risen high. "Sister," I whispered, "thank you for planning every road for me. You foolish girl. I am the one who owes you. I told you long ago I would protect you for the rest of my life." My eyes burned with tears. So she had never forgotten the promise she'd made when we were children. Though we were twins, born only moments apart, because she arrived first, she had carried all the burdens, striving to shield us both. All this time, I believed I was the one helping her in this life. Yet in the end, it was she who gave me the freedom I had once only dared to dream of. In preparation for the enthronement, the Crown Prince's household gradually moved into the palace. What surprised me was that Yuan Hao merely promoted Jie Rong to imperial concubine, even though she had once been the favored secondary consort. Fei Qing, for bearing the imperial heir, and Song Shi, for her lineage, were both named noble consorts. As for me, I became empress. On the day I moved into Qianning Palace, I dismissed every attendant save one trusted maid. Yuan Hao offered no objection. Before this, I had passed the Phoenix Seal to Song Shi to manage in my place. He tacitly approved. When all was settled, Song Shi and Fei Qing came together to pay respects. Song Shi was already heavy with child. Fei Qing glanced at her belly, unable to hide her envy. Song Shi smiled serenely. "When I am close to giving birth, I won't be able to oversee everything. You should bring a Xing over to help care for me." Fei Qing's eyes brightened. "Thank you, elder sister." I watched them and quietly reminded, "There will be many more sisters in the palace before long. The two of you must support each other." Song Shi nodded with understanding. Fei Qing turned to me, her voice soft and coaxing. "Your Majesty, but haven't we already won?" I simply looked toward Song Shi, my heart stirring with the sense that the time was near. In the 16th year of Yuan He's reign, the Crown Prince ascended the throne. That same year, a sudden calamity struck. Qianning Palace was engulfed in flames. The Empress was declared critically injured, beyond all hope. Noble Consort Song presented proof that Consort Jie Rong had set the fire. In the end, the Emperor ordered her confined to the cold palace. 3 months later, under pressure from the Prime Minister and the Minister of Personnel, the Emperor agreed that after the mourning period, Song Shi would be named Empress. On that same day, the Prime Minister's house and the Minister's house exchanged betrothal gifts, preparing to become in-laws. While all this unfolded, I was already far away in Jiangnan. 3 years passed. One morning, while I watered the flowers outside my quiet home, there came a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood Xinqing and Fei Huai. Behind them, a familiar voice called softly, "You." I lifted my gaze. It was Yuan Xing. He smiled at me gently, his eyes just as tender as they had been the first time we met in the life before. The end.